Trouble in Turkey and the near collapse of the Turkish Lira is having an impact here at home. This morning, the rand lost more than 10% of its value against the US dollar. Although it recovered some of these losses, emerging markets are bracing for a meltdown. So is our rand at risk? Joining us live from New York is Santosh Rao. He's head of research at Manhattan Venture Partners. Very good to have you with us. How bad is it looking?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Well, you're seeing that this is the after effects of what's going on in Turkey. I think it's too early to say that it's the end of the world. This was expected to some extent because, I mean, let's step back and the macro scenario, worldwide global economy was on the edge anyway, with the taxes, with the sanctions, with with the tariffs going on. So overall, there was a sense of skittishness in the overall market. So it was susceptible to headline risk. So the last thing they needed was something as big as the Turkish Lira selling off. So I think you will see that, and the emerging markets did get affected, but the emerging markets that are very well run in terms of foreign reserves, enough foreign reserves, and a fairly decent economy, they are able to sustain this loss. So I think
yes, because the emerging markets really took the brunt of it, didn't they? Tell us more about why they were more affected.
Yeah, so the emerging markets were, see, the emerging markets are also facing some headwinds overall. With the rise in dollar, you're seeing that their cost to finance their debt is going up. So already they are on the defense, and that's a big thing. So now I think they were the most susceptible to this rising rate. Now you have some other factors going in also, the oil prices going up, the overall, just the funding, the refinancing of the debt is going to be a lot more expensive, a lot heavy. So they were the most susceptible to, but the European banks are also getting hit. So anyone exposed to Turkey is getting hit, but the overall exposure is not that big to derail the whole global economy.
And what has Turkey and Erdogan in particular done wrong here?
Well, I think there are two or three things going on. I mean, before you even had this crisis, I mean, they had their own domestic political turmoil. Their current account deficit is high. The cost of borrowing costs are very high. Then they're exposed. They are the highest importer of oil, so they're exposed to higher oil prices. So overall, their economic situation was not that good. And then the central bank does not have the authority to do what's right for the economy. They need to raise the rates to stop the inflation, stop the run on the lira. So they need to do all these, the tools that the central banks have in other emerging market countries, Turkey does not have because of Erdogan's mandate, I guess. So I think that's what's happening. So Turkey needs a free hand. The central bank there needs a free hand to do what's right, and they don't have it right now.
And you say that the sort of impact that it's had on the Turks, obviously the Germans as well, are feeling the heat. The German foreign minister had this to say.
Turkey is an important country for the European economies beyond the European Union. It is an important country for German companies, and what we have been witnessing in Turkey is indeed cause for deep concern. All of that adds up to political problems, and especially the increasing tension in the conflict with the United States.
So how should the Germans and the other European countries be viewing this?
Yes, so I mean, let's step back again one step. The whole global economy is interlinked right now. Any problem in any remote part of the world affects everyone else. So we are interconnected. This is a new world order. So Turkey is a small, relatively small economy. It's probably 1% of the global GDP. So it's really very small. But overall, I think they play a part. It's an important link in this whole global chain. So it affects. But can the other countries come back? It'll take some time. I think in the end, the dust will settle. Turkey will come back to normal. Right now, there is a battle going on. It's a battle of philosophies between Turkey and Trump. And so I think the dust needs to settle, the language needs to tone down, and I think the common sense needs to prevail in terms of economy and economic policies. So I think you'll get there, but in the near term, there is going to be a shock, but it's not going to be a meltdown that we saw in the 97, 2000s or the 2008, 2009. It's too early to say that, but Turkey is, at the end of the day, a very good country, a very good economy with very good resources and very talented people. So they will bounce back, but they need this political turmoil, and the leadership is really a big hurdle for the economy.
Yeah, and Erdogan is saying that Turkey's in an economic war. I should imagine that doesn't help.
Exactly. I think the rhetoric has to tone down. The way everything's coming together, it's just a perfect storm of events with his own internal problems. Then you have this external problem of this dollar and the U.S. sanctions and the tariffs. I think that's just kind of, it's a perfect storm of events trying to derail the whole economy. So hopefully, like I said, common sense will prevail in the larger interest of his. He needs to curry favors with his own people also. So there is some domestic turmoil as well. So there is a limit to how far he can go in terms of alienating his own people. So we'll see how big the tolerance is, how large the tolerance is. But at some point, I think there is a breaking point, and you will see him come back. So the contagion is there,
and we've got all those geopolitical
but
shifts as well, haven't we? Sorry, excuse me jumping in here. If you look at what's happened to Qatar and the UAE under the blockade, I should imagine that's all had a ripple effect as well.
Absolutely. I think I didn't catch the last part of the question. You're talking the tariffs. Did they have an effect? They absolutely did. Tariffs are...
Oh, and we lost you there, Santosh Rao. Thank you very much, though. We'll unpack this further in the next hours. I'll bring you a full rundown of the day's news. Coming up at 9, we'll head live to Ankara to find out if this financial crisis could bring down the Erdogan presidency. Let's take a quick look at the markets. The rand appears to have made a strong recovery following its overnight slump. It was 15.70 to the US dollar at one point in the early hours of this morning, as emergency market currencies, led by the Turkish Lira, took a bashing against the US dollar. That's our show for tonight. News is up next.